Hello and welcome to our webinar on Media Backbone Navigator X. Today we are going to do two things on this webinar. First, we'll go over some use case scenarios where a media asset management system would be of benefit. And then for the second half, we'll actually jump into Navigator X to show you just how easy it is to get started managing your assets. So first, some scenarios where a media asset management system makes a lot of sense. The first scenario is if you have assets in a number of different storage locations with no particular organization. So you might have assets on camera cards, on NAS storage or hard disks, maybe stored in the cloud, and there's no real organization to the assets. The issue here is that it becomes hard to find those assets. And obviously, if you can't find the assets, you can't monetize or use them, so you'll be stuck. With NavigatorX, NavigatorX will organize your assets regardless of the storage location that they are stored on. We provide a very simple GUI to browse and preview those assets. And obviously, we generate proxies for viewing your assets when they're offline. Additionally, we manage archive to relieve local storage, NAS storage, or RAID storage, so you're not clogging up your nearline storage. The second scenario is if you have lots of different assets with lots of different formats, and finding your assets can sometimes seem like finding a needle in a haystack. Obviously, there's a need to maintain the integrity of metadata that's logged in the field, and you may have the need to distribute those assets in various formats. With NavigatorX, again, NavigatorX will organize all your assets. We've got very powerful search for finding your assets. We can import technical metadata and sidecar XML files for additional metadata. We can interface with external devices for accelerated transfer and transcode, and even QC. And we provide workflow tools so that regular users can manage your workflows without the need for engineers or custom coding. The third scenario is, this is a large problem in the MAM market, is many MAMs are just too difficult to use. It's hard to search for assets. Sometimes the GUIs aren't very intuitive, so users spend a lot of time getting trained up on those systems, and it just becomes harder to do your work. With NavX, again, we offer a very intuitive GUI that requires little to no training at all. And on the workflow side of things, workflows can be created by ordinary users, and they do not have to be created by programmers or engineers. Another scenario is for editorial departments that need access to past footage of, say, for example, an entertainment show. A lot of times those libraries can be pretty extensive, and the editorial departments may need access to every take, every angle for, going back multiple episodes or even years. Also, with long takes or long line cuts, it can be hard to find portions of your clips that you need to get back into an edit to do maybe a promo. And obviously, you want to have some sort of a streamlined workflow from ingest to archive. So with NavX, again, we've got a very powerful search engine that can help you locate your clips based on metadata. We even support creating events within your videos so that you can locate specific portions of your videos. We utilize naming rules to import any type of asset and relate those assets to your clips. So if you have closed caption files or maybe script files, you can relate those to your assets, again, to make it easier to find your assets. And lastly, we have plugins to HSM adapters to facilitate archiving into existing LTO infrastructure. And lastly, scenario number 5 is if your archive is just a massive black hole and you need a way to manage that archive, but also be able to search within that archive. That way assets aren't just lost on your archive system. With NavX, NavX will manage archive, whether it be to our own ODA technology or to LTO. We create proxies and thumbnails of all your assets. And even if your assets are taken off of your nearline storage, the proxies will always live online. That way you can search for your assets, you can preview them, you can edit with those proxies if you wanted to, and then you only need to recall back the portions of your clips that you need to work with. So at this point, I'm going to jump into NavigatorX. And the first thing that you'll notice about NavigatorX is that NavigatorX is completely HTML5 based. So I'm working inside of a web browser. This allows us to be platform agnostic. So whether your clients are hitting it from a Mac, a PC, Linux, or even an iPad or a tablet device, they can access the system through any major web browser. Additionally, NavX is file agnostic. So while we do have support for videos and images and your media assets, you can register any type of file you want into the system. The screen that you're seeing right now is the main asset manager window, and it's a very straightforward interface. On the left-hand side, you've got our tree panel where you can build bins to organize your content within. You can favorite those bins if you have a very large tree structure, and you can also save smart searches, which I'll show in just a second. In the middle, you've got your asset viewer, where you can page through your assets. You can view them in a detailed view with metadata. You can also view larger thumbnails. And then on the right-hand side is the metadata pane. When it comes to metadata, you are able to create your own custom metadata schemas, as many schemas as you want with whatever type of fields that you need. So those can be string fields, Boolean fields, drop-down fields, what have you. You can require certain fields or not require other fields. You have complete control over your metadata schema. In addition to the custom metadata schema that you can define, any technical metadata that's associated with your assets. So for videos, it would be your video and audio information. For images, it would be your technical image data and your EXIF data. All of that will come over and be added to your assets and will become searchable pieces of metadata. At the top here, you've got your search area. And in this area, you can do simple searches. You can also do advanced searches. When it comes to our search, we use Elasticsearch. So if you're familiar with Google or any of the major search engines, it's the same open source technology. So right here at the top, you can do simple searches. And again, you can search across any piece of user input metadata or technical metadata. So if I wanted to search for a clip that I know has AW in the name, or clips that have AW, and I know it's an audio video file, I can go ahead and do that search and it'll pull up all those assets very quickly for me. Additionally, I can do a advanced search, and here I can layer together both technical and custom metadata fields in order to find my clips. And if this is a search that you are going to be doing on a regular basis, you can save this advanced search as a smart search. And so you can kind of treat these smart searches as smart bins, if you will. So I've got a couple here on the bottom. One I've used to identify my PDF assets in the system. These two I'm using to identify assets that I've sent to archive. Inside of NavigatorX, as a part of the core software, we do have our own software transcoder built in. So any proxies or any transcodes for distribution can be generated by our own internal transcoder. Additionally, we do have integration into third-party transcoders, including Telestream Vantage, Sorensen Squeeze, and Rosette. So again, we're going to create proxies of all your video assets. That way you can view a very lightweight preview of your proxy. You do have full control over the resolution, bit rate of your proxy. So if you want to generate a lower quality proxy for better performance, you can do so. If you want to create a higher quality proxy that you may use for editing, that's also an option. Inside the viewer here, you'll notice that we are frame accurate, so you can actually scrub the timeline here or move frame by frame with your arrow keys. Additionally, your normal NLE shortcuts will work. So JKL for scrubbing the timeline and I and O for setting in and out points. These in and out points are used for a few different things. The first is our events. And events allow you to assign metadata to specific portions of your content. So in this case, I've actually added an event here for guy kayaking. And so now, because I have set this in and out point, if I go to search for guy kayaking, not only is it going to pull up this clip, but when I open up the clip, it's going to take me right to this in and out point. So you can imagine if you have an hour-long broadcast and you want to make a note of a specific 30-second portion that you may use again and again in maybe promo videos, this is a great way to be able to find that specific piece of your content. Additionally, we have support for closed caption files. So we have support for displaying your closed caption files on your videos, but also, and I'm just going to assign one here. So you can overlay your closed captions on the actual video inside of the viewer, but also your closed captions will get brought into the subtitle events tab. And these are also searchable pieces of metadata now. So if I were to search for something that's in my closed caption files, not only would it return that video in my search results, as you see here, but also if I filter down, it'll filter down the lines of my closed caption files that it pertains to or that my results match. And then you'll see as I go to either one of those, it's going to take me right to that in and out point. So again, making it very easy for you to find your content using some of that event level metadata and subtitle metadata. NavigatorX, the other big part of NavigatorX is workflow orchestration. We have a very powerful workflow orchestration engine that powers NavigatorX, and NavigatorX is really meant to be not only a MAM, but really is meant to take care of the full life cycle of your media. So from ingest all the way through to distribution or archive. As far as ingest goes, we have the ability to ingest from a number of different storage pools. We can ingest from local storage, NAS storage. If you have an existing archive library, we have the ability to ingest from that archive library. We can ingest from the cloud if you have an Amazon S3 bucket, or if you're utilizing our own C Media Cloud platform. We can also ingest from FTP locations. On the distribution side, the same types of storage pools can be used as distribution endpoints. And for archive, NavX has the ability to archive to our own ODA technology, but also to LTO libraries via a few HSMs that we interface with. Those include Zendata, StoreNext, and SGL FlashNet. Specifically with archive, NavX, and with transcode as well, anytime NavigatorX is interfacing with a third-party device, be it a transcode server or an archive library, NavigatorX is communicating directly with that device via its API. So NavX will manage the workflow from beginning to end. NavX will manage pushing the job to that third-party device, but also getting status updates back from the device. And so the next step there is, how do you build the workflows that NavX is going to execute? Well, that's where we come to our workflow editor. And with our workflow editor, we've taken all of the power of our workflow orchestration engine and put it into a very easy to use graphical interface here, where now you can, via this drag and drop interface, now you can start to design your workflows. And it's as easy as dragging these tiles down and connecting them together. So I can connect these tiles up. Actually, I'm going to just switch the order of these two here. So in this case, I would do a transcode, and then I'm gonna actually transfer this asset. So I can very easily create my workflow here. And then in the info panel, I would just go and configure any of the necessary values for my workflow. So creating workflows in NavigatorX is extremely easy to do. It doesn't need to be done by developers or engineers. And this is key because you want to make sure that your MAM is easy to use, both from an administrative side, but also for your end users. One last point about NavigatorX before we end the webinar is NavigatorX also has the ability to work with the cloud, and we work with the cloud in a number of ways. One is we can ingest and use the cloud for distribution. Again, if you have an Amazon S3 bucket, you can use that S3 bucket as both an ingest endpoint and a distribution endpoint. Additionally, if you have our C Media Cloud service, we have a few deeper integrations with our C service. First is, from an ingest perspective, we have the ability to display our C workspaces and actually sync those C workspaces directly to NavigatorX. So in this scenario, you can actually use the cloud as a way to ingest assets into the MAM. So if you had contracted producers or shooters in the field that are going to get clips back to you, they could actually upload those directly to C, and without having to do any extra steps, those assets would get synced automatically down into your instance of NavigatorX. Additionally, if you had one of our Sony cameras that's able to produce proxies on the fly, those cameras can actually push those proxies directly up to a C workspace. And before that camera even makes it back to your facility, those proxies will actually sync down into your on-prem instance of NavigatorX. Additionally, for distribution, you can push your on-prem assets out to a C workspace. And this is a great way for you to extend your MAM and share your assets outside of your network without having to give users access into your network. And lastly, obviously, we've already spoken about NavX's ability to manage physical archive libraries such as ODA or LTO libraries. But now we also have the ability to archive into the cloud. Using our integration with our C Media Cloud platform, we now have the ability to take your on-prem assets and actually archive them to Amazon Glacier. And what this will do is it will actually archive it. It'll push those assets up to Amazon S3 and put them into Glacier dormant storage, which is charged at a much lower rate than normal S3 storage. So from a very high level, you can see how easy to use NavigatorX is. Again, NavigatorX is meant to be the workflow orchestrator for your full media lifecycle. So NavX can handle ingest of your content all the way through to distribution and archive. One last point on NavigatorX is obviously you need a way to get your assets out from your MAM into your NLEs. We have a few ways that we do this. One is we can do a basic export. And so from here, you can export your assets and you have the ability to specify whether you want to export your masters, the proxies, or maybe both. So if you want to start editing with your proxies and then maybe conform your 4K footage later, you have the ability to do so. We also have inside of NavigatorX what we call storyboards. And storyboards are great because storyboards allow you to put clips on a timeline. You can set in and out points. So as you see here, I've put some clips onto this timeline. I've gone in and set in and out points for these clips. And now I can actually take this timeline and export an EDL, which I can bring into any of your major NLEs. For customers that work within the Adobe ecosystem, we have an even better way to work with NavigatorX. And for those users that are in Premiere or in Adobe After Effects, we actually have a NavigatorX panel built directly into the applications. So this panel, just like any other panel in Premiere, can be dragged wherever you want it to, and you can log directly into the NavigatorX system. And from here, not only are you able to browse for your assets, but you can do all of your simple searches, all of your advanced searches. You can browse your bins here on the left-hand side. You can view and edit your metadata. You can even upload back into the system directly through the panel. So for your Adobe Premiere or Adobe After Effects editors, a lot of times 90% of what they need to do can be accomplished directly from within the Adobe application without having to jump back and forth between two GUIs. So again, just to wrap up, you've seen very quickly how easy it is to get up and running with NavigatorX and how easy it is to navigate the system and build workflows. In future webinars, we'll go over specific use cases related to some of the more in-depth features of NavigatorX. Thank you for joining.